Well, thank you. Thank you all for being here today. This is a really important topic that is near and dear to my heart, being a Staten Island resident and somebody who represents so many in both Staten Island and Southern Brooklyn that gave their life as first responders, and the families who lost loved ones who were murdered by terrorists on September 11, 2001. Unfortunately, we're here because we're seeking accountability. Accountability has not yet been provided to the thousands of families who suffered a tremendous loss at the hands of the terrorists who were in Guantanamo Bay. And a year ago, myself, Senator Ted Cruz, wrote to the administration saying very clearly that a plea deal would be unacceptable and not to pursue a plea deal, because a plea deal automatically takes the death penalty off the table. And that is what the people that I represent and all Americans want and deserve. In September, in 2021, a trial was set a date in January. That date was postponed because of COVID. And then it was set in September of 2021. And then again, it was postponed, but that time in pursuit of this plea deal. We're thankful and we are pleased that Secretary Austin revoked this plea deal, because to all of us standing here today, that plea deal was unacceptable. These murderers, monstrous terrorists, deserve the death penalty, and anything less is unacceptable to our first responders and to the loved ones here today. And that is what we're calling for: trial date to be set. Stop wasting time. Let's move forward and let's get justice for the families here. We picked this particular spot, postcards. As you know, this is our community's 9/11 memorial. It honors 263 Staten Island residents killed September 11th. Also honors the 1993 World Trade Center bombing victims. And sadly, this memorial had to have been added to year after year after year, because every year we continue to lose men and women who sacrificed, heroes that ran into those buildings to save others, to 9/11 related illnesses. Over 70 Staten Islanders alone. And so, despite losing hundreds of first responders on that day, we have lost a tremendous amount more, exponential number more, in our firefighters, police officers, and rescue workers that are now suffering from 9/11 related illnesses. So I want to bring up those heroes and those representatives of our men and women who serve this city so greatly. And I want to start with Andy Ansbro, who's the president of the Uniformed Firefighters Association. They lost 343 firefighters on 9/11. 78 of them were on Staten Island. We're the smallest borough, and yet we lost a quarter of those firefighters, and we continue to do so every year. Andy?
Thank you. Thank you for having me. Thanks for coming, everyone. I represent 20,000 active and retired New York City firefighters. Most of those members are in the World Trade Center healthcare program because they are sick. Many of them are dying due to the terrorist acts 23 years ago. Over 700 members of the FDNY passed in the last 23 years. And last week we were all shocked to hear that Khalid Sheikh Mohammed and his two fellow terrorists would be offered a deal that would allow them the luxury of living out their years in housing paid for by the U.S. government, fed by the U.S. government, and I can only assume medical care paid for the U.S. government. And 2 weeks ago we were down in Washington announcing the funding bill for the World Trade Center healthcare program, which we have to do every year. But these terrorists would be given food, housing, and medical care, while New York City firefighters, other first responders, and other victims would continue to die. That was unacceptable. Also last week, in Manhattan Federal Court down in Lower Manhattan, there was a JASTA hearing, Justice Against the Sponsor of Terrorism hearing, concerning Omar al-Bayoumi, a Saudi government employee, and it was to determine whether or not there was any evidence to link him to the 9/11 attacks. My membership wants to know if any deal is in place for these members. Will they be testifying to link the Saudi government directly to the 9/11 attacks? We need to know these things. I believe that if the deal, we need to know, was the deal to take the death penalty off the table related to cooperation with these terrorists in the future trial? Was the deal made to ensure that this will help link the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia directly to the September 11th attacks? Sadly, we don't know. But that being said, I deplore Secretary Austin's decision to put the death penalty back on the table for these murderers. They should spend every day they have left in fear that their lives will be cut short. It's a fear that many New York City firefighters live with, and the actions of these terrorists have put thousands of others on death row. Each month we lose more, and the thought that New York City firefighters continue to die while these men would be spared the ultimate justice for their crimes is disgraceful. It's not just us. Many are sick and dying. Last year, my father passed away from 9/11 related cancer. He was a police chief on 9/11 for the NYPD. There are currently over 132,000 people in World Trade Center care programs that are directly affected by their terrorist acts, and they demand justice. And we're happy to know that the ultimate justice is still a reward fitting of a terrorist. That being said, we'll be reaching out to some person to sit down with them and let him know how we feel about this case, and let him know that the ultimate justice should still be on the table. And we want to express to him how this has affected the thousands of my members' families and the 100,000 other families out there. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I'd like to call up Frank Conti, who's the president of Port Authority Police Benevolent Association. Lost 37 members on that day.
Hi, good afternoon. My name is Frank Conti. I'm the president of the Port Authority Police Benevolent Association. I would like to first thank Congresswoman Malliotakis for organizing this conference to make certain that our 9/11 family members' voices are heard. And I would also like to add, it's a privilege to be here today with all of my brother and sister counterparts in the police and fire unions, and of course 9/11 line of duty survivors who are here in our midst. As the president of the Port Authority PBA, I represent 1,700 police officers active, a couple of thousand additional retirees, and of course their families. And like every union leader here today, I represent the families of those whom we have lost. On September 11, 2001, 37 members of the Port Authority Police Department lost their lives in the line of duty. There was a Port Authority police precinct inside of the World Trade Center complex, which was, of course, destroyed in the collapse of the towers. 47 civilian Port Authority employees were killed. Since 2001, our department has had 16 additional members suffer line of duty deaths attributed to their 9/11 related illnesses, and sadly and tragically, we have several more pending as we speak. To each and every member of our line of duty families, a debt is owed. They should all expect our nation to vigorously seek maximum punishment for the perpetrators of this mass murder. This terrorist plotted, planned, and executed mass murder of almost 3,000 people, and the sacrifice continues. Our nation owes it to each and every surviving family member to seek the maximum penalty for their crimes. The thought of plea bargaining with these people is an affront to the sacrifice of those who lost their lives and to those who live on to remember them. We appreciate Defense Secretary Austin's revocation of the plea agreements, and we look forward to the fullest measure of justice being served. Thank you.
The New York Police Department suffered greatly as well, and they actually lost so many more people since September 11, 2001 than they did on that dreadful day. And we have a number of those representatives here today, and I would like to first call up Mr. Patrick Henry, President of the New York City Police Benevolent Association.
Thank you. Patrick Henry, President of the Police Benevolent Association. Today, we need to recognize the courage and the strength of the families of our 9/11 heroes and the families of all the victims. For 23 years, this has been a nightmare for them, and they waited patiently for justice. And last week, they got the devastating news. They didn't back down. They didn't crumble. They felt that the system let them down. But they spoke out. They spoke loudly. And we know their voices were heard in Washington, and we're grateful that this plea deal was reversed. These want their day in court. They want to be able to tell the story of what happened on September 11th, 2001 to our country. So many lives lost that day. So many lives lost in the months and years to follow. So many suffering as we speak right now. And those three terrorists are responsible for it all. They were the masterminds behind the deadliest attack on our freedom. And there is evil right now around this world seeing what happens with this case. Ultimate justice needs to happen. The ultimate punishment needs to happen. These families deserve it, and our country's safety demands it. We're grateful to Congresswoman Nicole Malliotakis for supporting all of our 9/11 heroes, all of our 9/11 families. Thank you.
I have some other representatives here who have opted to not speak. I want to acknowledge them because they also do a great job representing the men and women of the New York Police Department. We have, Chris Telmy from the Lieutenants Benevolent Association. We have James Gatto from the Sergeants Benevolent Association. And we have Greg Silverman from the Detectives Endowment Association. Thank you for coming. I would like to now introduce Chris Monahan, President of the Captains Endowment Association. Okay, well, thank you, Chris, for being here. We appreciate your leadership. Gary Smiley is here representing the World Trade Center the World Trade Center Delegate Liaison for Local 2507, the uniformed EMTs, paramedics, and fire inspectors.
Thank you, Congresswoman. It's an honor to be here. Thank you so much to Nicole Malliotakis for always having our back. She's been a champion to the 9/11 community and the first responder community since day one. And echo the sentiments of the honored representatives behind me, the presidents of the UFA, PBA, the Port Authority guys. These people that are in Guantanamo Bay, they keep murdering people every day. On my way, I was on the phone with one of my retired members who for 22 years was going okay, and he was just diagnosed with stage 3, stage 4 cancer, and his treatment's not working. So now we have to figure out how to get him to the finish line and not to become another name on a wall. I mean, this does not stop. They murdered 2,977 people on September 11th, and through the grace of God, they didn't murder more. But since that day, they've murdered thousands. 1,004 members of the FDNY EMS responded that day. Over a quarter of my members are sick. I've lost over 250 EMTs, paramedics, and fire inspectors. There is not a week that goes by that I am not sitting in someone's house filling out paperwork so that their loved ones, their children, their wives, their husbands will have benefits from that when they pass away. These three guys have to go. There is no plea bargain. There's no nothing. They have to send a clear message that this is not acceptable and this can't happen anymore. Because first responders go to work every day, whether they're a cop, a fireman, a paramedic, an EMT, and they go there with risks that no one else really realizes. And nobody can have even the thought in their minds that they can do this without any repercussions whatsoever. So I applaud the Secretary of Defense, and I applaud Congressman Malliotakis and her group that are seeking the death penalty for these three terrorists and any of those that follow in their footsteps. Thank you.
Thank you. We also want to thank Captain Mike Tracy and Lieutenant Joe Camacho from the Fire Officers Association, both board members. We thank them for being here. We have a number of family members who are here here today. We thank them for coming. We know that this is difficult, but we also appreciate their passion to get justice for their families and for their loved ones whose lives were cut short. I want to acknowledge that we have Beth Murphy here. Here. Oh, perfect. We'll have you speak in a moment if you'd like. Wendy Feinberg, Tommy Smith, Melissa Pullis, Meryl Mayo Marshall, and we have also my friend Joe Esposito of Rescue 5. He lost 13 of his firehouse colleagues, his brother, and a cousin. And today we have speaking on behalf of the families, Terry Strada, who many of you know. She has been one of the most vocal advocates for the families. I'd like for you to say a few words.
Hi, as she said, my name is Terry Strada. I'm the National Chair for 9/11 Families United. I lost my husband, Tom Strada, on September 11th. We had 3 children who were 7, 4, and 4 days old. Never forget is more than remembering our loved ones. It was a pledge to remember it is our duty to ensure our nation's history would be written fully, accurately, and devoid of interference from other nations, let alone our own government or current political sensitivities. I stand before you today with a heart that carries the weight of immense loss and a determination to ensure that all those responsible, the funders, bankers, ideologues, foreign governments, and terrorist masterminds who had a hand in the 9/11 attacks are fully exposed and shown no mercy by our justice systems. I am honored to address this esteemed group today. I want to thank Representative Malliotakis for her unyielding commitment to justice and transparency. The Congresswoman is a patriot who puts the American people first. She refuses to kowtow to prosecutors at Guantanamo Bay, an FBI that is too gutless to release its records, and those who prioritize foreign powers over justice for the American people. I want to thank you for your unwavering support and leadership. I see it, the people of New York see it, and the American people see it. Today we stand united against a plea deal, now or in the future, for Khalid Sheikh Mohammed, known as KSM, and the 2 co-conspirators being held at Guantanamo Bay, and to ensure that Al-Qaeda leaders will face their charges of murder as the evidence is heard. These terrorists awaiting trial are sworn enemy combatants to the United States, and they deserve the same mercy that the terrorists showed 2,977 innocent people, including my late husband Tom. None. A trial is needed so the American people will learn the full truth of our darkest day. We need to know who inspired them, who funded them, and who provided the critical support to see their murderous vision through, because truth is our best weapon to ensure that history will not repeat itself. KSM devised the plan to use airplanes as missiles, and he orchestrated the recruitment and training for the 19 hijackers who carried out his lethal scheme on American soil. The Kingdom of Saudi Arabia funded Al-Qaeda, and in a recent court hearing held in the Southern District Court in Lower Manhattan, never before seen evidence was displayed illustrating how Saudi government agents, some with diplomatic credentials, others with ties to Al-Qaeda, that they created the support network needed for Khalid Sheikh Mohammed's jihadi recruitments to plan, plot, and ultimately carry out the deadliest attack the world has ever witnessed. While we seek truths from the trial in Guantanamo Bay, there cannot be partial accountability. The lawsuit filed by over 10,000 9/11 victims' family members to hold the kingdom accountable for aiding and abetting the 19 hijackers will ensure full accountability is achieved for all of us. That lawsuit is facing challenges no one could have predicted. It is a painful truth that even now, 23 years later, the FBI is withholding from the public important pieces of the evidence related to 9/11. It says it has lost files. It refuses to be forthcoming. It painfully slow walks the review of evidence, and they miss important deadlines, like the one that we just had in court on Wednesday. In short, the FBI is hampering the 9/11 community and its ability to seek justice in the civil court by preventing the evidence of Saudi government involvement being made public. The evidence presented in court shows Saudi government officials and agents were the ideological architect, primary funder, and support staff for the hijackers. But more is needed of the FBI, and our government is not supportive. The Biden administration is not supportive. This lack of transparency from our government is a profound injustice that compounds our grief and hinders our quest for closure. Right now, what we need from Congress, and I mean now, when they get back, is for Congress to enact the Ensuring Justice for Victims of Terrorism Act. And I want to applaud Representative Mike Lawler, who's not here today, and Malliotakis for being our original co-sponsors of that bill in the House, which has been waiting for a hearing by the House Judiciary Committee for 376 days as of today. This legislation is pivotal in addressing the broader spectrum of justice that our community needs and deserves. Because it is not enough for the perpetrators at Guantanamo Bay to stand trial, we must ensure that every piece of evidence, every document, every truth is brought to light, and that the terrorists face the harshest of punishments. It is not enough for the FBI to say it's trying its best, when its every action says it's barely trying at all. And it is not enough for the thousands of Americans whose lives were torn apart that day to be given the chance by Congress, through JASTA, the Justice Against Sponsors of Terrorism Act, to hold foreign governments accountable, only to have that eroded by a court that misinterprets and misapplies the law inconsistent with what Congress intended. Congress can clear the runway for us, and it must. Only then can we say that we have done right by those that we have lost. Enacting the EJVT is not just a legislative duty, it is a moral imperative. Like invoking the death penalty in Guantanamo Bay, it sends a powerful message that we, as a nation, stand firm in our resolve to seek justice for all victims of terrorism. It tells the world that we will not be deterred by obstacles or delays, and that the truth is non-negotiable. In closing, I urge Defense Secretary Austin to move the Gitmo case along as swiftly as possible for all members and for all members of Congress to join Representative Malliotakis in enacting Ensuring Justice for Victims of Terrorism Act. Let us honor the memory of those we lost by ensuring that their legacy is one of justice, transparency, and unwavering resolve. Thank you.
I would like Beth Murphy to please join us and say a few words.
Thank you. Good afternoon. Thank you. My name is Beth Murphy. I am a 9/11 widow. I lost my husband, Kevin James Murphy. He was in Tower 1. He was working for Marshall McLennan. He was there 1 year. I had a 4 and a 7-year-old. I was battling melanoma. All my lymph nodes were taken out of my right leg. He was crying at my bedside. A week later, he was murdered. I live on Long Island, and I'm here today because I have been fighting justice for many years with a lot of these family members that you see here today. I had a massive stroke the 20th anniversary of 9/11. 2 days prior, Beth Murphy had a massive stroke. Her 2 children were at her bedside praying that I lived. And what I said in critical condition on September 10th, the 7 doctors that told me I'd never walk again was, I am not backing down. And I am walking again. And because my persistence, my fight, I went in a wheelchair to speak to Congress about all the bills that we're talking about today. 2 of those bills are sitting in chambers, and I've spoken to all senators. I was writing with one hand. I have a left side paralysis in the hospital for my children, for the death of my husband, all the family members here. I was writing to congressmen, congresswomen, senators, Senator Schumer, all of them in a hospital room for 3 months. And today, as I speak, I was there 3 days ago, this past Wednesday, with all the family members here, only to walk out of the courtroom and get a news break that I had to tell my children that there was a plea deal. And that is something called restorative justice. We got a letter, and it said in the letter that you could tell your family to write questions to the terrorists, basically the detainees. Ask them why they did it. Well, do you know I've had 3 bouts of cancer and massive stroke? And stress can cause, what am I supposed to ask them? Your stress caused me all these issues in my life? My kids suffering, my family's pain, all these families' pain? Come on. And I am walking today because of fighting back for 9/11 justice for my husband. 7 doctors told me I was not going to walk, I'm walking. You saw me, I walked down those stairs. I have a brace on. I am not going away from 9/11 either. My children demand justice. Our country demands justice. And I want to personally thank Rep. Malliotakis because she has been an amazing advocate, a steadfast advocate for justice and support for all of the 9/11 families and victims of terrorism and all the first responders. My brother, just so you know, was a captain in the police department digging for my husband that day. So you are a beacon of hope for all of us, and thank you for all of us, from all the families. As we gather here, we are reminded of the profound impact of terrorism and what it has done to the lives of many, including my own. The pain, the loss, and the enduring struggle for justice are etched in our collective memories. It is our duty to ensure that this struggle is not forgotten and that it inspires all of Congress, all of the Hill to do something. Please act today. I don't want to wait another 10 years. I actually met a 90-year-old in the courtroom. His child was killed. Are we going to wait till that person dies to help him see the justice that his child was murdered? That broke my heart to see in the courtroom on Wednesday against the Saudi Arabian government. And it was an insult to sit there and have to beg for justice. It's a continual 23 years of begging. It's an exhaustive process. Congresswoman Malliotakis has been a tireless champion for victims' rights. From her efforts to introduce the American Victims of Terrorism Act, as Terry has said, to her recent work on ensuring justice for victims of terrorism act, she has shown that the principle of never forget must be reflected in our policies and all our decisions. We can't wait 20 years. In a courtroom, when do you see a lawsuit go 23 years? When do you see justice go 23 years? Never. And how do you explain that to your children? 23 years later, the 27 and 30, their mother's still fighting for justice. Battling 3 bouts of cancer and a massive stroke. Here I am, still fighting for justice. We all call on Congress to lead and take this decisive action. This time is promised. The time for promises, is over. We need concrete steps to ensure timely and adequate resources for victims of terrorism. We urge the Department of Justice, DOJ, to handle these cases with urgency and compassion they deserve. We are tired of begging the 9/11 families, writing that my kids must have written 1,500 letters. You know, they're children. They're children. Remember that. They are children. In honoring the memories of those we have lost, we must also look to the future. All of us here today are worried about the future victims of terrorism, the past victims, the present victims, and tomorrow's victims. We need to set a precedent today that we're not going to let justice not go resolved. Restorative justice is what the government was trying to do. You know what that means? My kid's writing a letter asking KSM why he killed their dad. That is disgusting. That's an insult. Should they ask why their mother had a stroke? She had 3 bouts of cancer? Come on. That is not justice in the American way. So what are we waiting for? For all of us to have more stress, more sadness, more, difficulties in our lives? This is America. What are we doing? Okay? I was an athlete. When you have a race, you have a goal and you have an end result. It doesn't take 23 years to run a marathon. This marathon needs to be over. Our politicians or Department of Justice, some of them have the brakes on. Time to finish the marathon. The marathon's over. I'm tired of running it. I can't physically run the marathon anymore, but I'm emotionally been doing it, and I'm tired. So thank you. I want to thank you. And there's a song that I just want to Tom Petty's song, I Won't Back Down, is a great song. Back down. Oh, well, that's why I love you, girl. But I won't back down. 9/11 widow with all these medical. There's a reason I'm walking when 7 doctors told me I wouldn't. So I'm not backing down, and I thank you for your efforts in every way, shape, and form. Thank you.
Thank you for being here. Thank you very much. Talk about a strong woman, 2 strong women that we had here today to speak on behalf of their families and all Americans.